Hello and welcome to Inside the Golden Dome, where we bring you the most in-depth coverage of Notre Dame Fighting Irish football. I'm your host, Brigham Avery, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce my co-host, former Irish tight end Oscar McBRIDE. And today we have a Hollywood celebrity, former Notre Dame student George Wendt.
Yes,
Gentlemen,
sir.
welcome.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank
USC has Will Ferrell, Texas has Matthew McConaughey, George Wendt, former Notre Dame student. Great to be here. Oscar,
Yeah, man.
we've been partners for a while. This is Notre Dame TV, Inside the Golden Dome on TV.
Yeah.
It's so exciting to be here. Please.
You know, we have a great show lined up,
Yeah.
man. You know, we have some highlights and in-depth analysis of our SC win on Saturday. I'm going to give you my big three on offense,
Love it.
defense, and special teams. You're going to like that because I'm going to throw a couple curveballs in. We also have Big Man on Campus with Tim Priester back in South Bend. He's done a phenomenal job with Irish Illustrated. We actually have our Legends interview, which is going to be outstanding. Can't wait. We're loaded.
Absolutely. We've gone through halfway the season.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame played USC just
Yeah.
recently. And what a game to break down. You know, offense and defense. Let's get into it. The biggest intersectional rivalry in the country. And we
Yeah.
had it this year. Unbelievable. So Notre Dame
Yeah.
had a really good balanced game of offense and
Yeah.
defense. I'd like to.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the offense, guys?
You know, I feel like, you know, offense was doing a good job. I think, you know, JP Cone gets a lot of flack. I think that he does a really good job managing the game. If you look at his stats, they're eerily similar to Ian Book, who was drafted by the Saints last year. He's playing for the Saints now as a rookie. Just a couple of percentage points off in completion percentage, 0.2 points off in yards per attempt. Ian Book had 15 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Right now, Cone has 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. So I think he's doing a good job of managing the game. We just need a little bit more help with the guys around him, making some plays and pushing the ball down the field a little bit.
Yeah.
George, I like the way he spread the ball around. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're poised to sort of blossom as an offense, and I'm okay with the two quarterback system, and it's comforting to know that Drew Pine can also manage the game and run the show and provide his own spark if and when he gets the chance.
You're talking about offense. Notre Dame was very efficient in this game. They scored on 4 of 8 offensive possessions, getting touchdowns. And I thought their defense, specifically Bo Bauer with the big interception run back, did a great job of knocking USC back and keeping them back all afternoon.
Yeah.
You ever notice whenever somebody makes a big interception and a big long run, and somebody runs them down on the 4-yard line,
They never
you
score a touchdown.
And it's
Never.
not just Notre Dame; it's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
football in general. It's like the effort play. You know, if you're
Yeah.
efforting, it's going to go right. But yeah, that certainly happened. But what a play by him and the Notre Dame defense. You know, we saw what happened to Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
I know that's very disappointing. How do you guys feel about that? How's that going to affect the defense in the long? I think it's going to really hurt them, but I think they can bounce back.
You know what? Let me say this. You know, when you lose a player like Kyle Hamilton, you know, you don't just replace like Kyle Hamilton. There isn't somebody waiting in your roster that's going to jump in and replace him, right? But I think you have other pieces around that will step up and make plays. I love Drew White and what he does inside at middle linebacker. I'm a huge Isaiah Foskey fan. I think he's truly the linchpin that makes that defense go and getting pressure on the quarterback and making the opposing quarterbacks get off their spots a little bit. So while we'll miss him, I think it gives opportunity for other guys to step up and help us out.
I want to see. I'm just going to go wild with a prediction, and I think Xavier Watts is going to help out back there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can
Yeah.
absolutely
I don't
see
know
that
if
because
he's
of
a good call.
his physical
He's
ability,
not
George.
slotted specifically at safety, but they seem to like what he brings, no matter where they slot him.
Yeah.
I really like the way Marcus Freeman had the defense going after USC, specifically in the second half. You know, they kept the pressure up. The Trojans came back and got a touchdown. Then they had an interception. They were driving, but they only held them to 16 points. So I really like the way Marcus Freeman has his team playing very physical and intense football.
I agree. I mean, if you're a defensive coach, especially defensive coordinator at the University of Notre Dame, you're setting the tone for the team, right? The defense sets the tone for the team.
Yes.
Right? You want to be physical. You want to be fast. You want to be able to take the ball away. You want to be able to get, as I said, those opposing quarterbacks off their spots. And when you have a team like USC, Keenan Slovis is a really good quarterback, right? And he's got a ton of weapons around him. You know, you talk about Drake London. He's by far the best receiver
What a
in the
block! What a
country.
blocker he is! My God, can he just lay guys out when he's blocking?
He's phenomenal. I
And
mean,
after the catch,
yeah,
Oscar and
yeah.
George,
He's-
he
he's-
runs like a deer.
He's phenomenal. I mean, he's the size of a smaller tight end, but he runs like a receiver. He doesn't drop anything, and the quarterback has to do is get it anywhere near him, and he's like flypaper. So to keep him in check, was a really good job. I think it really takes the defense creating pressure points, collapsing that pocket. USC's had some struggles up front, as we have. We know that all too well as Notre Dame faithful. We were able to take advantage of that, so that's a good thing.
You know, George, you have a background in comedy. Here's an impression of a comedian. What's the deal with the Notre Dame kicking game? What is it with Dorr? He can miss. He can make him from 55, but he can't make him from 25. How do you guys analyze that?
Oh my God!
It's not automatic. It never is. He's been very, very solid. I think we're blessed to have Dorr. You know, it was not a big pressure kick at that point. You know,
Yeah.
So let's get the game winners.
Right, and he got that against
yeah.
Virginia Tech. So you're after, and against Florida State, he was big too. I think too, George. You just wondered about the regression element. You know, about guys that are able to do that, and then, you know, they kind of get like what's his name, Cougar at the beginning of Top Gun. You know. I don't know, Oscar. You got something to say?
Mr. Dorr, I love you. You're my little brother. We've got to do better. 69.2%. That's 6.9 out of 10. You were 6.5 out of 10 last year. We need to be able to depend on our field goal kicker in those close games, right? So we can kind of steal one if we don't play well on offense and defense. Take the first drive, for example. We talked about them being up-tempo, and we talked about guys moving around and making plays. We go down. We have a drop by Kevin Austin in the red zone. Should have caught it. First down. Great ball by Drew Pine. Actually bounced off of his head. Then we have a field goal kick that's wide right. Totally deflated the rhythm and the momentum that we had.
Yeah.
So I think while it's good to have him and he has made some game-winning kicks, I think where we're missing is that consistency and knowing anything inside of 40 yards, you're a Notre Dame field goal kicker, man. That should be money.
Oscar, what would Lou Holtz say to him, to Dorr? How would he take him aside and do a little impression? It's really good. We've gone this long without hearing it, George. But
You can't grab him by the ears anymore.
No. He would. You know what Coach Holtz would probably say?
What would he say?
He'd probably say, "Hey, son, let me tell you. Hey, I know you work hard. I know you care about Notre Dame, and you're a big part of this football team. But let me tell you, we're recruiting some people. It'll be okay."
And he'll walk away.
All right.
You know?
You're going to have fun in your mom's basement. Aren't you playing that Nintendo? What are you, Nintendo 2 you kids play? Goodness gracious. George, what was it like the first time you met Lou Holtz? What did he say to you? And make Oscar say it.
I can't remember.
Listen, Norm.
You know, he's a hilarious guy.
Right.
Lou, yeah.
100%.
I bring him up because he had a fun time beating USC all the time, and you did too.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm wondering now, isn't it nice to see you guys, Brian Kelly, 8-3 against USC. Notre Dame won the last 4. It's kind of like back in your day. And I'll tell you what, after seeing what Pete Carroll and Reggie Bush and Matt Leiter and those guys did to Notre Dame, it is nice to have them back and beating USC consistently again, isn't it, guys?
We used to at my house. You know, I'd have a bunch of old Notre Dame friends at my house for the game, and
Right.
we take a bus to the game, and then
Oh.
party at my house afterwards. And my wife would kill me because I'd break out pots and pans,
Yeah.
and we'd put them on our head
Oh.
and walk around like the Trojan band.
Good, right?
And yeah, George, put those away.
That's so
Take them away from everybody.
That's so great. I tell you what, weekends are always better when Notre Dame wins and USC loses, and when it's head-to-head, it's perfect.
Something we'd like to introduce now called Oscar's Big Three.
You know what? I know that everyone loves Michael Mayer, and I love him too. Shout out, little bro, National Tight
He
Ends
was great
Day.
on the Chappelle Show.
I love that guy. He's phenomenal. But I'm going to go with Jack Cohn as my offensive guy. As I've said, his stats are eerily similar to Ian Book's from a year ago. He's a winner. He's tough. He's accurate when you give him time. The one knock I would say is he probably holds onto the football a little bit too long. But again, when you have an offensive line that's been kind of cut and paste, throughout the year, it kind of makes it hard to do that. I'd also like to see him get a little bit more help from his receivers outside. As you and I were talking about off camera, George, it's, Mayer's going to be there, but he's not going to be able to give you a lot of yards after the catch because since he's the one weapon they're keying on, he's not going to get much. There's going to be a guy in front, a guy in back. They're going to bracket him. But I love what Cohn's doing. I think he's going to be a great player for us down the stretch. Defensively, everyone's All-Americans. Kyle Hamilton. I'm throwing a curveball there, too. Isaiah Foskey's my guy. Isaiah Foskey's my guy. I think he's phenomenal. I think he, at 6'5", 260, the guy runs like a deer. He leads the team in sacks. He leads the team in forced fumbles. He leads the team in tackle for loss. He leads the team in fumble recoveries. He even has, Brig, a pass defended. He has one pass defended. Kyle Hamilton and Cam, what's Cam's last name?
Cam Hart.
Cam Hart lead the team with 4
wow.
passes defended. He's a defensive end, and he has 1. So my pick for defense is Isaiah Foskey. Special teams, obviously, Tyree. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's explosive. He's elusive. We missed him against USC. That toe's been giving him a little trouble. But
that was a huge play against Wisconsin. He made the run back.
Phenomenal. And those are the types of chunk plays that we need to get the momentum going. You had a guy that can take it the distance. That sets everything on fire. Back to
and he wore the Rockets number.
The Rocket Ismail
yes.
and the Clint Johnsons and the
yes.
Mike Millers of the day. When I played. So those are my guys. What do you think, George?
Oscar, anything?
Well, I
George,
got special teams. I'd have to include Bramlett because he's very solid punting, and of course as holder for Dorr, he's a key man there, and he's athletic. He can make a tackle.
Yeah.
And he also obviously as a high school quarterback in Alabama, no less. He he can run and or pass. Yeah. And that that's in the playbook somewhere.
We need more fakes.
Most, hopefully when it's not too obvious. Defensively, J.D. Bertrand, really just came out of nowhere. I mean, Shane Simon and Leafau were the guys, and here's our third guy, and he's leading the team in tackles. It's pretty remarkable. Like to see a little more youth. I want to get a look at Prince Colley.
Yeah.
But
I agree with that.
that's everybody wants to see the fresh new toy under the tree. And on offense, it's Kyron Williams. Sheesh.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be obvious, Captain Obvious, but
yeah.
Yeah.
He's the guy that can change the complexion of a game. In the run game, in the pass game, he runs routes like a receiver. He runs like a big back. He's not a really big guy. He's elusive. He's strong. He made a run in the first drive in the first quarter of the game Saturday. I don't know if it was a defensive lineman or a linebacker came free, just a jump cut out of the way and then put his foot in the ground and got the first down on third down. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. How about the amount of penalties that USC got?
I know SC has a ton of talent. I am not ready to cry over their spilled milk. I'm going to enjoy it as a Notre Dame alum and a former Notre Dame football player because they will get it fixed. And they will
be back.
And when they get it fixed,
I know.
It's going to be tough for a lot of people.
And gentlemen, I take you to 2001 and 2002. 2001, Bob Davie in Notre Dame. They kicked the crap out of USC. The next year, Pete Carroll's the head coach. Tyrone Willingham goes into USC, and they just thump them. It was like 52 to 13 or something bad like that. So things changed from one year to the next in this rivalry. We have a great show ahead of us, guys. It's going to be outstanding. So glad you guys are here. George Wendt, Celebrity Juice on Inside the Golden Dome. Oscar McBRIDE for Brigham Avery. Stick around. We'll be back with Irish legends after this on Inside the Golden Dome. Welcome back to Inside the Golden Dome. I'm Brigham Avery, the host. My co-host, Oscar McBRIDE. George Wendt has been kind enough to sit in as our celebrity host. And this is a segment of the show we call Irish Legends, where we bring in and interview a legend of Notre Dame football. And this gentleman today, at his time of graduation, held almost every Notre Dame passing record. He was a world champion with the Dallas Cowboys. Steve Berline, everybody. Hey, all right.
What's up, gang?
There you go. Look.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought we'd at least have a few beers up here at the bar.
Really?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I didn't think that was even
The
an option.
outtake. Steve, welcome. Please talk about the Notre Dame carousel that has been 2021 with Cohen and Tyler Buckner and Pine.
We're going to
what
jump
are your
right
thoughts
into
so
it.
far?
Huh?
Yes, sir.
We're going to get right into it. Well, there's a saying, and Oscar probably heard this many times when he played too. If you've got 3 quarterbacks, you don't have 1 quarterback. And that means that there's not a one guy that stands out as a guy that can really hold down the fort at that position. That's really important. Yeah. And I do think I understand what Brian Kelly and Tommy Rees are trying to do and trying to create a scenario where you've got guys out there in the field doing what they do best. My fear is, whenever Tyler Buckner comes in the game, the good teams are going to start, once we start kind of, if we start really defining him as our running quarterback, they're going to come in and they're going to know when he's on the field, that he's out there to run. Now, he can throw the ball too. He completed a couple passes the other night, and maybe if Tommy Rees can really, tap into his creative side, there's a way to really take advantage of that. If they overcommit to the run, and Tyler is, I think, a capable passer, you can make some big plays out of that. But it's got to evolve to that point. Jack Cohn to me is he is what he is. He's a game manager. He completed 20 balls the other night, very efficient. He's a smart guy. He's got a lot of experience, fifth-year senior, but only 189 yards, and there were no big plays in that game. Whenever we needed a completion, you knew he was going to go to Michael Mayer, who's a beast, and he needs to be the guy that you can count on. But we have to find other players in the pass game to get the ball to make big plays. And I just don't think we're doing a really good job of that right now. When Lindsey is the playmaker that he is from a speed standpoint, he's got one catch for -2 yards. That's not good enough. No. And where's Kevin Austin? Where's Avery Davis? There's other guys out there that need to step up and make plays, but the quarterback has to give them those opportunities too.
Absolutely.
So Jack has got to push up the field a little bit more. If Buckner's in there, he gets a chance to throw. We've got to make those receivers get involved. The one thing I was a little bit confused about the last few weeks, Drew Pine, a few weeks ago, it seemed as though he brought a little life to the offense.
Right.
The people were, all my friends were texting and tweeting and talking about the energy that he seemed to bring in. And now the last 2 weeks, he hasn't been part of the plan.
I'm a numbers guy, and I was diving into the numbers a little bit, and I was comparing the numbers that Jack Cohn has now with the great Ian Book, right? So I looked at Ian Book's numbers from last year. I looked at his completion percentage,
right?
Just a tad under 65%. I think it was 64.6 or something like that. I look at Cohn; he's at 63.2.
Right.
Right. I looked at the yards per completion. Ian Book was at 8 yards. Cohn's at 7.8. But then I look at some other things that maybe Jack Cohn doesn't have, or maybe some things that he has to deal with that maybe Ian Book didn't have to deal with. Strength of schedule. Right. 51st with Ian Book, 5 with Jack Cohn.
Right.
Ian Book, phenomenal offensive line. Jack Cohn, not so much.
Yes.
Right.
Jack Cohn is, if you surround him with the right kind of talent, also the right kind of game plan and the right kind of creativity, giving him the option to do what he does best, he can be very efficient. Yeah. But he's not going to be the kind of quarterback that can carry a football team. Right. And I don't think he's quite the level of Ian Book.
Well, I think they're obviously last week's game, the Southern Cal game, they recognized that Cohn really cannot just stand back there because he's toast. If he starts thinking we're done, he's sacked.
I think you're onto something. That was the mentality against USC, and I think because USC, even though they're struggling right now, they're still USC.
Yeah,
they've got some talent out there, and I think they were very concerned about how that young offensive line was going to hold up against pressure, and so the mentality was, let's get rid of the ball quick. Right. Yeah. Let's let Jack get back to make a quick decision, get rid of the ball.
And I think it helps him too in his
head.
It
helps him, It gets his confidence, gets his rhythm going. Right. No doubt about it. Right. And you were 100% right with the Ian Book comment. Ian Book, much more mobile than Jack Cohn. But one of the questions, one of the concerns I always had with Ian Book, or one of the issues I had, I should say, was that we didn't take enough shots up the field. We didn't try to make those the good teams. The really good elite teams in college football make plays up the field as well. Yeah. If you want to win a championship, you got to be able to make those chunk plays.
To your point, Steve, I feel as though when they did let loose and really go for the gusto, that was against Clemson last year, November 7th.
Yes.
And they really aired out the pass. They had Kyron Williams on a big run early, and I feel as though when they went for it, they were successful. So I'm wondering what's holding them back. I know there's a lot of variables. I know there's a lot of specifics, but what is keeping them from being so aggressive, specifically on offense with the quarterback position?
Well, Oscar mentioned it, and I think it really starts with the O-line and being able to be confident that they can stand up and hold up under pressure. That's the real number one issue. There's a lot of things that coaches want to do, I'm sure, but it's a matter of whether they can do it, whether they can have the ability to hold up and to handle all the different looks that might be thrown at them. But you're right, that Clemson game last year was the one game that jumped out to me. It's the one time where we really seemed to step up in a big game and make big plays. Now, they were without Trevor Lawrence. They were without 2 defensive starters in that game.
Right.
Clemson was, and they hammered us pretty good later in the year in the game that really mattered. But it was a big game mentality, and we went after them. We attacked. We were aggressive, and our team was ready to play. We need to kind of develop that kind of an identity as well as this season moves along, or it's going to be, just another so-so year.
Steve Berline, thanks so much for joining us. Irish legend on Inside the Golden Dome. We'll be back with more after this. And back on Inside the Golden Dome for Brigham Avery, my partner Oscar McBRIDE. George Wendt has been sitting in. This is the Irish Legends segment. So we had Steve Berline on from the offense. Now it's time to bring in another Irish legend from the defensive side of the ball. And who better than former Dick Butkus Award winner, the man for the Chicago Bears. He is Chris Zorich. Chris Zorich, welcome, brother. Great to have you, Zorro.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Chris, what are your thoughts so far on Marcus Freeman and the 2021 Notre Dame defense?
The first couple of games was a little kind of shaky, but overall, I am excited. I was fortunate enough to have him on the Zorich podcast, and he just got me fired up and felt like I wanted to still go out and actually put on the jersey to go play at 52. So I can imagine what he's doing with these little 18, 19-year-old kids.
Yeah. Well, Zora, I have a question. I mean, you're obviously one of the toughest guys to put his hand in the dirt on the defensive line. Give me your thoughts on Isaiah Foskey. I think personally that guy is a game changer, leads the team in sacks, tackles for loss. I mean, he's everywhere. He's making plays, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries. I think he's even defended a pass. What are your thoughts on him and what his trajectory is as he transitions into Sunday play?
Well, I am very excited about him. Unfortunately, it's one of the only guys that we're able to get excited about right now. The thing is, if we can move him to every defensive line position that we have, that would even be more effective.
Right.
But I mean, I understand what Freeman was trying to do. But the exciting thing is that he is a game changer, as you said. And if we can just free him up a little bit more, maybe play him on the weaker players,
Right.
on the weaker offensive players, maybe he might be able to do a little bit more. But as of right now, I think he's going to have a great year this year, and hopefully he'll have a chance to play on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Is it that important that he learns how to drop back in coverage? Is that for his future or for the Irish on Saturdays, or it seems like a waste to the fan?
Well, it's really kind of being able to give a certain type of look on defense. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but way back about 500 years ago when we played Miami in 1988, there were actually a couple of times when we actually only had 2 defensive linemen rushing the passer, and I was able to actually drop back from the nose guard position because they often threw to their who was that? I forgot the name of their tight end, but they often threw to him. And so now, if you're Walsh, and I'm not saying that I intercepted or that I was able to make a big play or anything, but now all of a sudden there's this big body out there when he wanted to pass to his receiver that was kind of in the middle. So in regards to what you're saying, George, any look that you can provide to confuse the offensive scheme is great. And when you have a player such as his ability that normally rushes all the time, then all of a sudden he drops back in coverage. This is a situation where the quarterback is going to be kind of taken off guard, and he may even get a pick.
I think it was Chudzinski was the tight end.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think.
you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Rob
You're right.
Chudzinski.
Rob
Rob
Chudzinski.
Chudzinski.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think he's like an offensive coordinator now or something like that.
For the Browns, is he for the?
I
Yeah,
think he is.
somewhere,
Yeah.
Chris, let me ask you this. I know you're a defensive guy, but talk a little bit about the offensive line play. I mean, you've obviously played against some really good offensive linemen in college and in your NFL career. Talk to us a little bit about how important it is for our offensive line to play a little bit better to give us some stability with our offensive football team moving forward.
Well, as you guys can see this year, it's just really been abysmal. I think they've tried to play every offensive lineman they had on the roster, even probably guys who didn't plan on playing, they wound up playing, and guys who are walk-ons. I'm surprised they wouldn't add in the Observer.
I saw some Clay High School letter jackets on the sideline. I think at Clay High School, they were really scraping the bottom of the barrel, weren't they, Zorro?
At this point, And, I'm really confused because, I have a whiteboard in my office. So I'm assuming that Coach Kelly and the offensive line coach, they have whiteboards too. And they have a listing of all the players at each position.
Yeah.
And if they had so many guys leave last year,
Mm-hmm.
you need to get guys in there that are going to have experience for the incoming years, right?
Yeah.
So if you got 5 guys or 4 guys that leave last year, well, make sure that those guys, the backs behind them, are getting enough playing time
Absolutely.
where they're not freaking out
Yeah.
when they get a game situation.
Sure.
And I think that that's what's happened this year.
Zorro, as a defensive guy, how excited do you get when you see the way that Marcus Freeman uses Kyle Hamilton?
Kyle Hamilton is one of the largest safeties in college football, may even be in the pros.
Yeah.
But when you have an athlete like Kyle, then you have a chance to he has a chance to roam and really do everything.
Talk a little bit about Drew White. He's obviously the man in the middle. Had a great year last year, and now is kind of the linchpin that kind of holds the whole defense together. As a guy who played linebacker in the beginning before you moved down inside. Talk a little bit about his kind of some of the stressors and some of the things that he's dealing with as he's trying to lead this defense forward.
He's been playing as best he can, and he's coming in making some great plays.
Yeah.
But it's also, we as fans have to be understanding that at the end of the day, this kid's 20, maybe 19, 20 years old, and he's just out there trying to do what he can. He's getting yelled at from his coaches, from Coach Kelly and everything else. And he knows that when he messes up, he's going to be in the film room and stuff like that.
Right.
So the idea is just to have patience. But for him, it's great because he'll have a chance to kind of mature and really understand what it is to kind of play in a really aggressive defense.
Right.
One more thing, I can't let you escape without this. I take you to October 14th, 1988, the eve of the Catholics versus the Convicts. You were at a pep rally with this man, George Wendt. He is here now. Would you please retell that story, gentlemen, before you escape Chris on Inside the Golden Dome? George, you could start. You guys can tell.
I had just concocted this James Brown bit for my speech. And the gag was I was just going to say, we've got some unfinished business, and it's not just my second semester junior year course of studies. It's not even the honorary degree, which we know is long overdue. And I said, and I mentioned a couple of recent Miami scores, and I just started screaming.
Right.
And I looked around, and everybody was like, "What is going on?" and I was like,
Crickets. You get.
and then Zorich behind me stood up and started screaming with me, and then the whole team started screaming.
I love it.
The whole building started screaming.
You rock the Joyce.
And then I had this production assistant, I guess, come up and put a cape.
A James Brown style.
And I walked off, and then I threw the cape off, and I ran back to the mic and started screaming more. And Zorich was the only one who got it.
Thank you, Chris, for being wise enough.
That's
Man.
great.
Where was
That's so
Wes
great.
Pritchard at that
Awesome.
point?
I hope that somebody has a video of that because I remember that vividly. That'd be so cool if we can find that somewhere.
I spoke to the campus and to the university about footage. They said, we must have it somewhere, but they've never gotten back. It's like the Kennedy Zapruder film or something. We don't want people to see what actually happened that day. We can't.
Right.
It's a Catholic
Either that
school,
or it's
everyone.
on one of those reels. It's like a reel or something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've actually, I think I've seen it.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't have it.
On TMZ?
I don't.
Goodness
We
gracious.
have to find that.
And we got to absolutely. So this is the eve of the Catholics versus the Convicts, and I think that you guys, you George and you Chris, propelled them to slay those Hurricanes. So thank you, George.
Well,
And
that's what Lou said, actually.
Yeah.
Lou said it all started at the pep rally.
The pep rally. There you go,
it all
George.
started,
We
and I
do
said
appreciate it.
and sprayed at the pep rally, right? Holy
And
cow.
then, I don't know if you remember this, George, but literally about maybe 2 years later, I was fortunate enough, you were at the Brian Piccolo golf outing, and I was presented the Brian Piccolo Award from the Chicago
How
Bears. I don't know
special,
if you remember
special.
that one.
Yeah, I remember. Of
Outstanding. Man, Zorro, it's been great to have you, brother. Come back again anytime. Chris Zorch, Irish legend, breaking down the Irish defense and retelling Picking Up Oscar and
man.
tales from the pep rally. Goodness gracious.
Thanks, guys.
Chris, been great to have you. Thank you so much.
Love
There
you,
he
brother.
goes.
Appreciate
Everybody-
you, man.
That was Chris Zorch. I'm Brigham Avery. He's Oscar McBRIDE for Irish Legends. George Wendt is with us as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with so much more on Inside the Golden Dome. Welcome back to Inside the Golden Dome. I'm Brigham Avery for my co-host Oscar McBRIDE. Have a great time. George Wendt is with us. And now it's time for a segment of the show we call Big Man on Campus. And we go live to South Bend to Irish Illustrated's Tim Priester, the senior editor. Tim, thank you so much for being here. Welcome back live from the Bend. He is here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Tim, I want to jump right in, man, because when you think of Notre Dame football, you're the guy that comes to mind. I remember you covering us when I played. I mean, you're just a Notre Dame guy. You've seen a lot of Notre Dame football. You've seen a lot of teams. Kind of give us your Cliff Notes version of where you see this team right now and where you see this team going by the end of the season with 4 or 5 games left.
Well, I think we knew going into the season that this was a bit of a transition for them. 9 guys drafted, 5 others signed as free agents with the NFL. So when you lose 14 NFL players, there's going to be a bit of a transition, and we've seen that along the offensive line. They had a new defensive coordinator come in, Marcus Freeman, highly touted, but he brought in a much more aggressive defense. And then with the loss of the 4 starting offensive linemen from last year, they adjusted the offense to Tommy Reed. So, I mean, it clearly is both personnel on the field and in terms of approach offensively and defensively. It was a transition for them, and they started slowly with the offensive line. It's come around certainly a little bit against Virginia Tech and then much more so against USC.
Sure.
It's still kind of trial and error, though, with the system defensively. I think that the win over USC was their most complete game, but they still have a long way to go.
Sure, absolutely.
Tim, how good are the Cincinnati Bearcats this year? Pretty impressive, would you say?
Yeah, I think they're really good. When you study the film of them, I mean, you can say that they're a group of 5 team, but when you study the film, you see their corners are outstanding. They have a quarterback that's going to play in the NFL. The receivers, I thought their receivers going into the Notre Dame game were better than Notre Dame's, and that proved to be true. So I think they're legitimate. I know they just struggled against Navy, but they're very well coached. They're very disciplined. They're now number 2 in the country. At Notre Dame, there's no such thing as a good loss, but that's a really good team. The Bearcats are legit.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody ever beats Navy, truly. Anyway, ignore me.
No.
No, I mean, why do they shouldn't even punt ever, Navy.
He's talking about Navy and their triple option, Tim, in essence.
No,
Well,
I understand
he
that.
knows,
And
he
Navy
knows.
is actually, Navy's starting to come around a little bit after a really slow start. I know they still only have 1 loss, but to give Cincinnati a game like they did, they're just finding their quarterback now. It's taken them most of the year to do that, and they're improved. And when I look ahead to the Notre Dame schedule, I know I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but North Carolina has a lot of offense. Virginia is going to be difficult for Notre Dame to beat at Virginia. Most of the defenses that Notre Dame faces the rest of the way are pretty forgiving, which is a nice tie-in to the progress that Notre Dame's offense has made the last 2 games.
Talk a little bit about the receiving core. Everybody knows, Michael Mayer is a beast. Go Notre Dame tight ends. But what else can we do, in your opinion? What else? What other positions? What other players do you feel need to step up to give us a legitimate chance to be a contender? I mean, we got to push the ball down the field a little bit.
Yeah, they do, and they've done that a little bit more than they have, but it's been an inconsistent group. Kevin Austin is the guy that they peg as the number 1 wideout, and he's had moments where he's been really good, but he's been inconsistent because, frankly, he hasn't played on a regular basis since his senior year in high school in 2017. So they need him to come back for a 5th year next year, and I think he'll be better. But, just inconsistency there. Braden Lenzy, sometimes he steps forward, sometimes they're not sure exactly what they can count on. Probably the most reliable of the wideouts is slot receiver, 5th-year senior captain Avery Davis, who's done some good things. He was very significant in Notre Dame's double overtime win over Clemson, number 1 Clemson last year in Notre Dame Stadium. But it's, Michael Mayer is their most consistent receiver, and when it's the tight end, as great as he is, when it's a tight end averaging 11 yards per catch, that limits you from really pushing the ball down the field. They throw the ball a lot to the running backs. Kyron Williams, in addition to being a great runner, is also an excellent pass receiver. So him and Mayer help supplement the wideouts, but the wideouts just have not been. And it's been, again, when we talk about transition, it was a transition to a senior class that had a bunch of receivers in it, but a group that just didn't have a whole lot of playing experience entering the 2021 season.
Right. Talk about a little bit about the recruiting class that we have coming in. Well, as of now, I mean, it's supposed to be great, loaded with talent, with skill, with defensive players. Where do you see maybe a couple of those guys, or maybe where you can just kind of give a broad overview of the class and how they might be able to help coming in?
Yeah, really strong at linebacker. Marcus Freeman, in addition to bringing in an exciting, aggressive defense, is an outstanding recruiter. And I think Tommy Reese is really growing into that role. But when I look at that group, I mean, it's mainly defensively where you look first. They're bringing in a bunch of linebackers, several top 100 guys. And then you look to the offensive side of the ball. I give Tommy Reese a lot of credit. C.J. Williams and Tobias Merriweather are two of the top-ranked receivers in the country, and he played a big role in bringing those guys in. Yeah. It's a legit top 5. Now, when all is said and done, Alabama's still going to they're going to be recruiting right to the very end, and a lot of the 5-star guys that they get end up coming in late. So will Notre Dame finish in the top 5? I think they have a good chance because it looks like Billy Schroth, who is a offensive lineman, really love his game, an offensive guard who was from Wisconsin. It's hard to pull offensive linemen out of there, but I think Notre Dame has a good chance of landing him. So it's definitely top 10 when all's said and done, but they're in the top 5, and they have an excellent chance of finishing in the top 5 this year.
I like the idea of bringing in so many linebackers, shades of a la Vinny Serrato, 1988, 1989. Bringing in a Bryant Young, who was an outside linebacker, a Jim Flanagan, who was an inside linebacker, and Oliver Gibson, who was an inside linebacker, and those guys transitioned into extremely, extremely good defensive linemen as they started to grow and develop. So I don't know that that's going to happen, but it's good to see that type of talent on the defensive side of the ball coming in.
Yeah, and even though, even the linebackers are being recruited at backer, Marcus Freeman runs a defense, and those guys are asked to blitz frequently. So you need talent there. Absolutely, you can create pass rushers off the edge with those guys, and then many of the linebackers currently on the team are guys that are blitzing between the tackles. So can't have enough linebackers. Yeah, definitely can't have enough tight ends. Right?
No doubt, man. No doubt. Yeah. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
Tim, this narrative that you have is a regional narrative, but the national narrative has always been Notre Dame cannot win the big game. How much of that changed on November 7th of last year after they dethroned number 1 Clemson, where you are and you feel in a national perspective? Because people cannot say now they can't win the big game because Trevor Lawrence or not, they still dethroned number 1 since the first time since 1993. I think you were there.
I was.
And how much has that changed the perspective of this program?
Well, it changed it in November of last year, but then they had an opportunity to play Clemson again in the ACC championship game in Alabama in the playoffs. And unfortunately, they weren't very competitive in either one of those games. So, Notre Dame's critics are still loud, and I think, rightfully so. Brian Kelly needs to beat some top 10 teams. They did win that game at home, number 1, under the lights, double overtime. But, like it or not, people are still going to look back at that game and say that Trevor Lawrence didn't play, and they had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Correct. That came back for the ACC championship when they beat Notre Dame thoroughly. So, on one hand, Brigham, I would certainly agree that they showed that they could do that in a big-time setting, but there's still a lot to prove. And ultimately, until Notre Dame starts winning major bowls / playoff games, the critics are still going to be out about Brian Kelly winning the big games. And I understand he's done a great job of winning against teams he should beat. They've won 37 straight against unranked teams. And that's how you put yourself in position for playoffs and chances to beat top 5 teams. But they still have to prove it. And I think Brian Kelly himself would admit that.
Yeah. It seems as though right now, with the amount of talent they have on offense, the amount of talent they have on defense, Oscar and I talked about cohesiveness on both sides of the ball, because it seems those individual puzzle parts of great skill position players and great on defense players like Kyle Hamilton. How is that cohesiveness going to grow as this team moves forward in 2022 and 23? Are they building on something with these skill position players?
Yeah, I think they are, and we've seen, talking top 5 classes, that we've seen an uptick. There's no doubt that they're moving. They're definitely moving in the right direction, but chemistry takes time along the offensive line, as we've seen this year with 4 new starters. I think the defense, they gave up a bunch of points early. They're still battling the problem of, like late first half drives and then fourth quarter scoring. We saw it again with USC. USC scored a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So it's coming. There's no doubt. But there's also no doubt that there's been an uptick in the recruiting. And that is the lifeblood of the program. And I think if you can, Tommy Rees is a young offensive coordinator, but I think he's very sharp and making progress. And if they could keep Marcus Freeman around, you could continue that continuity. And with the type of talent they have coming in, I think to some extent, next year is still a bit transitional, and you play Ohio State and Clemson. But the foundation of this program is still very solid, and I see a consistent double-digit winning football program.
He's Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated. George, anything for Tim?
I thought of something when you mentioned Kyle Hamilton. Any updates injury-wise?
It's not looking good, George. It's not looking good.
Oh.
He's not going to play Carolina. And, here's the deal with Kyle Hamilton, a potential top 5 pick. And when you talk about top 5 pick, we're talking about a whole bunch of money. And so he won't play against North Carolina. We know that. Brian Kelly has said that. And then as you inch closer to the end of the season, he has to make a decision about whether he comes back for a team that is very unlikely to make the playoffs, even if they run the table through the rest of the regular season.
Right.
So Kyle Hamilton's a great player. He's going to make a lot of money. We hope that we see him in a Notre Dame uniform again. But this injury is going to keep him out this week. And with each week that passes, it's going to be difficult to see him in a Notre Dame uniform again.
Sure.
That's it.
Before we let you go, I have to ask you one last question. I'm a big fan of Isaiah Foskey. I mean, the kid can just flat play. 6'5", 260, runs like a deer. 7.5 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, even has a pass defended. Where do you see him progressing, and do you even see him staying for next season?
Well, that's the big question. He was great against USC. A couple more sacks. I actually think his sack total's up into 8 now, with a chance to get into double digits.
Right.
First day draft choice, I would say yes in 2023. If he comes out now, which there's a very strong possibility he will and probably should, I'm not sure that he quite goes that high. I think that if he had another solid season behind him in 2022 at Notre Dame, he would definitely be a first day draft choice. From Notre Dame's standpoint, you hope that he stays and gets more experience because this is his first year as a starter.
Right.
But he is going to be very difficult to keep at Notre Dame this year because he's trending up, and when you do it against USC, everybody notices.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to have you on again. He's Tim Priester, Irish Illustrated, our big man on campus on Inside the Golden Dome. Stick around. We'll be back with more after this. And we're back live on Inside the Golden Dome. Brigham Avery for Oscar McBRIDE. George Wendt has been hanging out with us. We have a guy that's a huge fan of the show. His name is Mikey B. He's from South Bend. He wanted to call in and wish us good luck. He's here now.
I've been trying to call this show forever. I finally got through, man. I finally got through. It is raining and 40 degrees in South Bend.
Wow.
And we miss all of you. Go Irish.
Coach, so good to have you. The top 25 is out. Thoughts so far in the first 25 of 2021?
Well, I made some changes in our coaching staff. I thought we needed to do some things with our staff and get better defensively, and that's really been a focus for us really since June when we had summer school again, which is so important to us here with our program. Guys getting better and guys getting older. So we had a great football win, obviously, Saturday.
Yes.
How about this Friday night? We got an exhibition game.
Wow.
And then we get to beat up on Carolina in football the next night. So it is it's basketball weather in South Bend. When I look out and it's rainy and 40, it's time to stay in the gym.
Absolutely. So Coach, I love what you do. It's always fun to watch a Notre Dame basketball team play. We've traditionally been behind the arc, letting the threes fly. Tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see from this year's basketball program and how we're gonna how we're going to stack up?
Well, we were 21st in offensive efficiency last year, but we were way down the line defensively.
Okay.
And so we have really tried to address that starting in June. I think we have returning offensive guys back that are pretty good, and a lot of different guys could get 20 on a different night.
Okay.
But we weren't good enough on that other end of the floor in defensive rebounding, and that's really been a focus for us.
Coach Bray, when is Kyle Hamilton going to come play small forward for the Irish? He's an amazing athlete. He played in high school. You need to get him on the basketball team, Coach. Honest to God.
I certainly feel for him with the knee a little sore, but I tell you what, he can really play basketball. He's in the spring last year. At times, the football guys would come over from the Goog and hoop, and I'd stand up top and watch. He can really, really play. But you know what? We know he's got a really bright future playing on Sundays.
Yeah.
So I'll be darned, I don't want him getting hurt playing basketball.
Not on your watch, right, Coach?
Yeah, absolutely, not on my watch. Okay.
Let me ask you this, Coach. You're 6th undergrad. You got a guy who was a Yale undergraduate now getting his master's at Notre Dame. How much does that help in recruiting?
It's a great question, and I think it's one of the things that Brian Kelly and I and Neil Ivey and the rest of our head coaches really sell. I like what football did. There's a big billboard when you're coming over on the toll road from Chicago, graduating champions.
Yeah.
And certainly,
I love that.
And isn't that a great one? That's been a theme that they've used, and I picked up on it simply because I've never had 7 guys earn a degree. I've had 4, I've had 5 once, but it really the type of young man that wants our place, wants to compete in the classroom as much as on the basketball court or the football field. And so
agree.
our clientele, I think at an early age in high school, is really earmarked for us. We don't trick anybody into coming here. I tell them up front, hey, look, school's hard.
Yeah.
School is really freaking hard.
Yeah,
But you know what? It's going to be really valuable. And I'll say this to young people. I think we're going to be your biggest challenge academically and basketball-wise, but we will be your biggest reward.
Coach, we just love having you on. We thank you for your support. We got a TV show now, so thank you for coming on Bishop Bray and blessing this show, Inside the Golden Dome. There you go. We love it. Yes.
Enough said.
I
We're good.
congratulate you guys on this. I know it's been in the works. I've talked to you the last couple of years, but it
Yes, sir.
sounds like it's going. And let's get on again in December after we've played a couple games.
Absolutely.
good,
Yeah,
Coach.
yeah, yeah. Now
Great.
you go take care of the ACC the way Lou Holtz used to take care of the Big Ten. You got it, Coach Bray?
I got it covered, fellas. Go Irish, and I'll see you soon.
Absolutely
All right,
great.
absolutely.
Thanks
There
so
you go.
much.
Thank you.
And that is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Golden Dome. I'd like to thank you, Oscar McBRIDE, my partner, for being here. It's been an amazing run.
It was awesome.
George Wendt, Hollywood legend. Thank you for adding everything. It's been great. I'd like to thank our guests, Tim Priester, Chris Sorts, Steve Berline Live, and Coach Mike Bray. We will catch you next time on Inside the Golden Dome. Inside the Golden Dome was filmed live on location at Silky Sullivan's in Fountain Valley, California.